My name is Rose Amador LeBeau. I am President and CEO of CTC. Our mission is to help people through employment and education become self-sufficient. We have a day worker center. We have educational programs so people can get their GEDs. We serve a variety of people, people who've just become unemployed, people who have never worked. We work with homeless people. We work with people who have just gotten out of prison and have to re-enter the workforce. So we're full service. I think it's seeing people make the change, become successful, make that transition, and actually having an impact on people's lives, a positive impact. To see these success stories is what it's all about. Hello, I'm Siwapili Rose Amador LeBeau, and you are watching Native Voice TV. Welcome to the show. I'm here with my co-host, Craig Pasqua. Hey, Craig.
Hello, Rose.
Welcome
Hello,
back.
everyone.
And we have some wonderful guests. We have a lot of information we're going to get from them today. But we have with us Michael Horse, and he's an actor, he's an artist, he makes jewelry, he just does it all. And Penny Opal Plant. And Penny, she's a Native activist for Native women's rights and so forth, and just so many issues. But they both have a store called Gathering Tribes, which is just fantastic. So there's so much I want to learn from both of you, and let's get it going. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, I'm Yaqui and Mexican on my mom's side, and Choctaw, Cherokee, and European on my dad's side, from Richmond, California. My family's been in that area since the 1930s, so for a very long time. Yeah.
Richmond. Okay, that's close.
Yeah, not too far.
Close. Okay. Michael?
I'm Yaqui and part Mescalero and part European, and I'm from Southern California and Arizona.
Hey, so
And
we have three Yaquis here.
Yes.
All right.
And a Modoc.
And a Modoc. All right.
That sounds like an old joke. There's three Yaquis and a Modoc go into a bar.
Walked onto a TV set. No. So, you know, Michael, you've been on Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And most recently, you just did another taping or a series or
Yeah, it's
that we can binge watch. Tell us about
25
that.
years later, it's been on Showtime, and I'm sure it'll go to Netflix. And Twin Peaks has been pretty interesting because it actually changed the way that people process television. A lot of the new stuff that's on now, Fargo and American Gods and Legion, all have Twin Peaks' DNA all over it. The shots, the pacing, and the character I played, the Deputy Hawk, was an interesting character. He was a very smart man. He was a college graduate, and it held some mirrors up to some stereotypes and did away with others. And it's been a joy to be back on it. And got some other projects. I just did a 7-hour miniseries for Netflix called Godless for Scott Frank, who wrote Logan. And it's a kind of a get shorty of Westerns, but it's about these very strong women in the West, and I'm looking forward to it. And Penny and I have an animated series that they're doing out of the Art Institute in San Francisco that's just going to be wonderful. It's a raven and a coyote own this gas station in the middle of nowhere, and people come by and instead of taking money, they have to tell them stories, you know.
Oh, I like that.
Penny'd never done this sort of thing, and I said, you want to come and do a voice? She was wonderful.
Which one were you?
The Raven.
She's
You were the Raven.
And she
I didn't even
heckles-
want to do it. I'm too
Yeah,
busy. But
she's too busy. And she was so good at it because the Raven heckles the coyote. The coyote knows everything, and she's, you know, the Raven goes, you don't know nothing, you know, you never went there, you know. So
Uh-oh, is that a reflection of?
Yeah, pretty much.
she
So
came up with her own lines.
it's been a lot of fun, and I have a little sci-fi movie coming out called Dead Ant. And
Dead Ant.
Dead Ant, A-N-T, which is kind of a cross between the 50s sci-fi film Them about giant ants and the Spinal Tap and Road Warrior, which is
Whoa.
pretty interesting. Yeah, but you know, I busy doing play acting, and my amazing activist wife is out there fighting to make the world a safer, cleaner, fairer place for everybody. It's an honor to be her husband.
Oh, that's nice to say. And I do see, Penny, you're here and there and speaking at this rally and that rally. What have you been working on?
The Indigenous Women of the Americas Defending Mother Earth Treaty is a big part of my life, and I'm one of the co-founders of Idle No More SF Bay, which we decided to keep the name. We've been around since 2013, and I'm also co-founder of an organization called Movement Rights, which works with municipalities and tribal nations in using local law or writing constitutions to protect their lands from, you know, any kind of harm. The fossil fuel industry is a big one, fracking and protection of the waters, and yeah, so I'm a little busy.
Is fracking going on?
It was just a little.
Yeah. Is fracking going on in California?
Oh yeah.
It is.
Yes,
Down
absolutely.
in Bakersfield area?
Yes, and I think it's been about 3 years ago now, you know, our Governor Brown runs around the world calling himself a climate hero, and he's like in bed with the fossil fuel industry. I'm definitely not a fan of his. And under his watch, the Oil and Gas Commission here in the state of California was allowed to put fracked water, it's called produced water, into over 500 of our aquifers that were federally set aside for human consumption. And I was at the UN climate talks in 2015 in Paris and had an opportunity to call him out at this big fancy event. Didn't expect I was going to do that, but I found myself rising up out of my seat as he was leaving early. He was supposed to be there to host this panel of governors who were very involved in a program called RED. It's part of the Cap and Trade program that is part of the new bill that was just passed, AB 398, which has already thrown indigenous people out of their forests. So people go in, let's say from France or the United States or somewhere, they go into these forests where indigenous people only exist because they have fought so hard to be in their forest, to remain in their forest. The trees are counted, the amount of carbon that the trees are supposed to clean is equated into dollars. And what happens, this has already happened in Nigeria, where the money goes from the carbon trading market to the country, and then to the state, and then to the municipality, and then to the tribe. So you can imagine all those steps where the money is siphoned off. So by the time it gets to the tribe, then one thing, they're not getting that much money, and for another thing, there have already been people evicted.
This is California AB?
Well, California 398, the AB 398, which
Who's
was
sponsoring
passed.
that bill?
Oh, it's already passed.
Okay.
And Jerry Brown went hand in hand with the fossil fuel industry to write the bill with Western States Petroleum. So here we are in California, you know, and California is one of the states which is doing the most progressive things around climate, that they think that they're doing the right thing, but in capitalizing, in putting dollar amounts on trees. Remember when Chief Seattle, that quote that says, "How can you sell the air?" Well, they finally figured out how to do that, how to sell the air. And these are forests that have, for millions of years, already been cleaning the air and sequestering carbon. So it's not like the forests are going to do anything differently. That's what they've always done. But they've figured out how Chevron, which is what Michael and I see every day, because it's directly across from our house, and Chevron can buy these carbon trading credits that allows them to continue to pollute my community. It's really, it's like a shell game, you know. That's all it is. It's a
And-
shell game.
And the state relies upon this cap and trade to
Now it
raise
does.
money for so many other things, not just, and you can see it whenever they sponsor a bill or something, we'll get the money out of cap and trade.
Which that system has already proven not to work very well, not only in the state of California, but also in the United States and around the world. It has failed. So I don't understand how they think that all of a sudden they're going to make this system work when it doesn't work for us, the air, the water, anything anyway. It's not working for that. What it's doing is it's allowing these polluting industries like the fossil fuel industry, chemical companies, and so on to continue to pollute until 2030. That's essentially what it's allowing them to do. So instead of saying, okay, how do we make sure that our water is protected? And let's not put fracked fluid into the water supply. Let's just stop doing that completely. How do we transition from gas-powered cars to electric cars? How do we make more renewable energy sources available for all of the utility companies? Like that is the point of the spear of where we need to go, not to continue to capitalize, to put into the capitalist system these mechanisms that are hurting people, that are continuing to allow these corporations to poison us.
Exactly.
It just, you know, I mean, they want to make it really complicated so that we don't understand what's actually happening. But
Did you
that's
get a
it in
response from Jerry
nutshell.
Brown?
Oh, he was very embarrassed.
Oh, good.
I called him out. I stood up and I said, I'm from Richmond, California. We say no to red. That's the program that's hurting Indigenous people. We say no to Chevron continuing to poison our communities. And by that time, all of the other people that were with me, were part of the Indigenous delegation, had stood up and were shouting no red. And two of my really good friends were shaking their fingers in his face. And he actually said several times, we're not going to participate in red. Well, it's a lie. You know, politicians, you can't expect them to tell the truth. It's been my experience.
Yeah.
You can't really expect them to
that's-
tell us the truth, just
What
like
can
with
people
corporate
do
officials.
to help you?
Well, it's
help
not
you, but
helping me.
But I mean, how can
You know,
people
Help
get
themselves.
involved?
Yeah, help
But how can
help each
people get
other.
involved? Because people,
Right.
a lot of people don't know, and then those some that do know don't do anything. So we
Right.
need to get people involved.
So I have two parts to that answer, and one is I'm one of the original signers on the Indigenous Women of the Americas Defending Mother Earth Treaty, which actually came out of the climate talks in Peru in 2014. And Casey Camp Hornick, she's a Ponca leader, elder, brought that back, and we, a group of women, wrote the treaty. So the treaty goes through all of the history of how we arrived to this point, basically, and what's being caused by climate disruption, like these massive hurricanes, the fires. It goes through a whole litany of issues that we're dealing with now. And then it calls on women who are signers to do two things, two obligations to signing. One is to conduct a new moon ceremony every month, which our crew has been doing since October of 2015. The treaty was first signed October 27th of 2015 during UN Climate Week in New York. And the new moon ceremonies are an opportunity to explain to people that come. Everyone comes to ours, men, women, all different ethnicities. We give an update on what's happening in our world and what's happening locally that we can participate in, and praying for wisdom and guidance and how we are to move forward, because obviously our human family hasn't done a very good job. And so we ask for that spiritual guidance to let us know, you know, where are we to go and how are we to do this? And we do it with love, because we're women, right? The other obligation is on every equinox and solstice to go and do a nonviolent direct action. So ours was yesterday at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District office. So they're meeting yesterday in San Francisco. And we focused on a very local issue. The Phillips 66 refinery in Rodeo wants to be permitted to build a huge oil terminal that would bring an additional 100 oil tankers through the bay into Rodeo. So we're not talking about conventional oil. More than likely it's going to be tar sands, where our relatives up in Canada, our Cree relatives, are dealing with, it's horrible. They go and they've scraped off this huge area almost the size of England. So all of the trees, all of the habitats for the medicine plants and the deer and the elk and all of the salmon and the fish, just throw it away. And then make this huge, awful fracking nightmare of the tar sands. So that oil from Alberta tar sands to the west coast and then into these tankers. So the biggest problem with that is that tar sands oil is heavy. It's really thick and gooey and it sinks to the bottom. And I don't know if you remember a few years ago in Kalamazoo, Michigan, it was 5 years ago, there was a tar sands oil leak in a neighborhood. And that oil is still in that lake. It's impossible to clean. So it's there emitting toxins, not only into the water, but into the air. So I don't think any of us want that in our bay or anywhere else.
Right.
So we're working really hard to prevent that from happening. And I was able to talk to the representatives there in that meeting of Phillips 66, and I walked up to them with my big open heart and a big smile on my face and let them know that we're the group that had 5,000 people in the streets during the Standing Rock and stopping the Dakota Access Pipeline, and San Francisco at the Army Corps of Engineers. And there's been a lot of people that have woken up, and if you continue with this permit, we will have thousands of people locking down this refinery. And so that's going to cost Phillips 66 millions of dollars. So you might want to consider just tossing that permit aside.
What was their response?
They always are stunned that somebody comes very friendly, and especially an older woman, and talks to them and shakes all their hands, and they're always just stunned. They kind of look at me like, what did she just say? What do I do with this information?
Well, I feel a connection there because I grew up in Oklahoma, in Bartlesville, which is the headquarters for Phillips Petroleum Company.
Right.
And in fact, I have a picture of myself and the CEO of Phillips, which is Mr. Keeler, who was also the chief of the Cherokees, and when I was a little kid. And but yeah, that was a big company, a big part of my life. They ruled the town.
And I think back then we didn't know none of our human family, and I just speak collectively, we didn't know what the result of burning fossil fuels would be.
Right.
So I don't have any ill will for any of those folks from the beginning that it was like bringing money into a lot of tribal nations and doing a lot of good work. But now we know.
Now we know.
Now we know, and I'm a grandma.
We were out at Ponca, and we were standing outside of fracking wells, and it's big pools of this fracking fluid. It looks like radiator fluid, and your eyes water, and my lungs started to hurt, and they're getting rare cancers that they shouldn't be getting, and their animals are dying, and and they're growing food. We saw big fields where they're growing soybeans and corn, and we've seen the fracking fluid come up out of these fields, and they just don't care.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good takeaway, is that the fossil fuel industry does not care about us.
That's true.
If they cared about us, they would already have started their transition. So one of the other fellows I talked to yesterday works with Chevron. And I went, hey, this is who I am, and how are you doing? And I live near Chevron. And I asked him, how is Chevron going to transition to make this transition? How do we get there? Because we all know we need to go there. We need to get through the eye of this needle in order to save the environment for our children. It's not looking very good right now. And he said, well, it's really going to depend on demand, our demand of fossil fuel. And so when I went back to, we had a teach-in there too, outside of where the meeting was happening. And I told people what had just occurred, and I said, so, let's all do our own research and see where does fossil fuel, what is that creating? It's creating all the plastics, all the rubber. Like I have rubber-soled shoes on right now. It creates a lot of it goes into a lot of the makeup that women wear, all of those plastic straws, you know. We can all do this one thing that's so simple. I mean, you asked what could people do. So there's that. And then there's what I ask people, what were you born? What are your gifts and what makes you happy? And apply that to remedying the climate disruption that's happening. Like, are you an artist? Are you a singer? Do you like to write? You know, are you somebody that can stand up and speak? Because I was never comfortable with that, but now I have to stand in front of groups of thousands of people and speak. So there is this thing that we're all required to do right now, to step outside of our comfort zone, but start with what's comfortable for you. And there are plenty of organizations, and any Indigenous women that are watching the show, you can sign this treaty. You can organize these new moon events, and it's been really successful. So there's been women that have signed the treaty from Alaska all the way down into Ecuador and other South American countries.
So this is a country that put a man on the moon and built the most heinous weapon in the world, you know. Figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll make money at it too. I mean, it's obviously where the new economy is going, to figure out these alternative sources of energy.
Exactly. And you know, some of these lawmakers, legislators, and it's like, don't you realize that this water will affect your kids somehow?
Yeah, what do they think that
the food you're eating will affect your grandkids, your great-grandkids? It's like it doesn't register.
Yeah. There's a disconnect.
There is,
disconnect,
absolutely. Yeah. And they start on the reservations, it seems like, you know, in South Dakota and with the pipeline, and they still did that, and they're still doing in the Cheyenne River.
But there are a couple of lawsuits pending for the Dakota Access Pipeline. So that's not a done deal. You know, those are still in motion right now. And there was a successful lawsuit. Unfortunately, I can't remember which nation it was, but you might know, where they successfully sued to get the pipeline off of their that was already there, because there was no consent originally for that pipeline. So the fossil fuel industry has to go out and take that pipeline out and figure out where they're going to move it. But we have, just in the Bay Area here, over 500 miles of oil pipelines.
Well, they're giving me some kinds of signs out there, and I can't believe we're going to. This is another show coming up. I know we have a lot to talk about, but I'm admiring your beautiful jewelry, your bracelet. Tell me about that.
I made that for myself.
You made that?
Yes. All my family were artists. They were jewelers and potters and painters, and I've been doing this since I was a kid. And that's basically what I am. I'm an artist. I got in the movies all by accident. You know, I was the worst rodeo rider in the whole world, and I used to wrangle horses on movies when I was a kid. And one day they said, we need somebody to ride across the desert here. We're going to shoot a gun and you fall off like you're shot. And I went, I fall off, I get paid? I've been in the wrong end of this. It's been the staying on part that's hard. So that's kind of how I got into the business. But yeah, my favorite thing is to still make jewelry.
Wow, and you're an artist too.
I do a type of painting called ledger art. You know, we used to paint on hides. That was our history book, our calendar. Could roll it up, take it with us. And then on the reservation, we painted on scrap paper, mostly on the pages of the ledger books that brought records that came to the forts and settlements and to the reservation itself. So there's about 4 or 5 of us that actually brought this art form back, you know.
Wow, that is beautiful. Tell me about Gathering Tribes.
Yeah, I opened it in 1991. It's on Solano Avenue in Albany. It's kind of how I met Michael. And he's one of our artists that we.
Yeah, it's Penny's store. I don't have anything to do with it.
You just make the jewelry for it.
Yeah,
He's very supportive.
Yeah, we've got jewelry from all over. You know, we don't recognize these. We don't recognize the borders. It's all the way from the tip to the top. You know.
Yeah, we represent Indigenous artisans from Alaska to Chile, and I enjoy welcoming people to Native America when they come into my store. You know, it's like,
what can someone find in your store? I've been in there, but tell our audience.
We have lots of fine art, pottery, Pueblo pottery, Mata Ortiz pottery. We have one of the largest collections of Zuni fetish carvings probably in the state of California. I have adopted family and Zuni, and so we have a lot of carvers that come out from there. We have a lot of weekend artist events with jewelers, and it's very exciting, and there's a whole community around it. And we always have a jar on the counter where we're raising money for people affected by whatever disaster is happening at the time. So
really interesting when we go back to, like, I'm in Santa Fe, and people find out that Penny has a gallery, and they go, we want to come and show your gallery. And I said, well, it's small. And they go, yeah, but we used to live in Oakland. It's a lot of Native people that their family came here during relocation, and then they went back home, but they all want to come back and visit Oakland again,
And all of the women that work there are Native American. So that's always nice.
And where is it located again?
It's at 1412 Solano Avenue in Albany, and it's easy to find on the web, gatheringtribes.com.
And what days are you open?
Every day.
Every day,
Yeah,
all
we're
right.
open
There's
every
no
day.
excuse.
I think
can
we're
go
only
any
open
day of the week.
a few days out of the year we're closed.
And we can find jewelry such as Michael makes there, and that you're
all kinds of
wearing, and
stuff
so
there,
forth.
Beautiful jewelry.
all prices, everything from really inexpensive earrings on up to, turquoise is getting pretty rare. It's getting really expensive. Most of the mines are all mined out, and Chinese are buying a lot of it. They came up to one of the big mines last year with a big bag just full of money and bought everything that the guy had. So each year I see it going, up and up, and the same pieces that you used to buy for $200 are like $800 now because of the rarity of turquoise.
That's the Indian gold.
Yeah.
If you need the standard, you need something to hang on to.
That's a pretty good investment.
Yeah.
I've seen it go up probably 500-600%, man, in my
goodness.
career. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we have to watch, let's see, Twin Peaks. We're going to check out Twin Peaks on Showtime. And that's the second season or series, or how
the
is it?
third season is 25 years later. We did it back in the 90s, and I
Right,
never thought it
right.
would come back. But it's got a pretty good following. A lot of young people. It will crack Penny up. We'll be going to the movies in Berkeley or something. She goes, those kids are following you. I go, can I help you? They go, are you Deputy Hawk? Yeah, and they just go crazy.
Okay, well, Deputy Hawk, I need your autograph before you leave today. We're going to wind up the show because they're giving me dirty looks over there. But thank you both for being here. I know. And we have to bring you back because I want to know more. We need to educate everybody because it affects everybody.
It does affect everybody and the generations to come. And if you have kids, nieces, nephews, if you're a grandma or grandpa, it's our duty to ensure that they have a survivable future.
You're coming back.
I just love the community up here.
Okay, and they'll talk about their movie. They're going to make about their lives.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.